The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy that flows through stars, planets, and the vast darkness between them. For millennia, the Jedi have studied this mystical field, mapping its currents like ancient navigators charting unknown seas. The Sith have bent it to their will, corrupting its essence for power. But what happens when something steps into the galaxy that exists entirely outside the Force, something so fundamental that even the cosmic energy field itself must bend in acknowledgement? The Clone Wars raged across 1,000 systems, burning through the Republic's resources and the Jedi Order's dwindling strength. On Coruscant, the galactic capital, billions went about their lives beneath endless traffic streams and towering spires that pierced the clouds. The war felt distant here, reduced to casualty reports and HoloNet propaganda. The Senate debated. The Jedi Temple stood vigilant. And in the shadows, Chancellor Palpatine wove his web of manipulation toward its terrible conclusion. No one noticed when he arrived. There was no ship. No hyperspace signature tearing reality as vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel. No disturbance in the Force that the Temple's sentinels could identify. One moment, the plaza outside the Galactic Senate building contained its usual flow of politicians, lobbyists, and tourists. The next, an elderly man sat on a bench beneath a bronzium statue of ancient Republic founders, a worn sketchpad balanced on his knee. He wore simple clothes, a faded tunic the color of desert sand, comfortable pants, boots that had walked countless miles. His hair was white, his face deeply lined, his eyes possessing a quality that defied simple description. They were kind. They were ancient. They held something that made those who glanced at him quickly look away, as though staring too long might reveal truths they weren't prepared to face. The old man sketched with practiced strokes, his stylus moving across the pad with the confidence of someone who had drawn for eternity. He captured the Senate building's architecture, the streams of airspeeders overhead, the hurrying figures of senators and their entourages. But he also drew things not yet present, shadows that would fall, fires that would burn, an empire's banners where Republic symbols now flew. In the Jedi Temple, 5 levels above the city's surface, Master Yoda paused mid-sentence during a council session. His ancient eyes widened fractionally, his large ears tilting as though listening to a sound beyond normal perception. Around the circular chamber, other council members shifted uneasily. Master Yoda? Mace Windu's deep voice carried concern. What is it? The diminutive Jedi Master gripped his Jimmer stick, his expression troubled in ways his colleagues had rarely witnessed. Felt something, I have, he said quietly. A presence, yet not a presence. Here, yet nowhere. In the Force, yet, he trailed off, struggling with words that refused to capture what his senses reported. Beyond the Force itself. Beyond the Force. Ki-Adi-Mundi leaned forward, his elongated head tilted in skepticism. Nothing exists beyond the Force, Master Yoda. The Force is in all things, through all things. Believe that, I did, Yoda replied, and the admission carried weight that silenced the chamber. Certain, I am no longer. The council members exchanged glances. For Yoda, who had lived 900 years and trained Jedi for 8 centuries, to question such a fundamental principle was deeply unsettling. Mace Windu stood, his hand instinctively moving toward the lightsaber at his belt. Should we investigate? Carefully, Yoda advised. Tread carefully, we must. What has arrived? He closed his eyes, reaching deeper into the Force, trying to grasp the impossible thing his senses insisted existed. The Force itself seemed confused, flowing around something it couldn't penetrate or define. Like water encountering an object that was simultaneously present and absent. Old, Yoda finally whispered. Older than the Sith. Older than the Jedi. Older than, he opened his eyes, and fear flickered there. Older than the Force itself, it may be. In the Senate building, Chancellor Palpatine stood at his office window, staring down at the plaza far below. His yellow eyes, hidden behind a carefully maintained illusion of grandfatherly concern, fixed on the elderly man sketching on the bench. Unlike the Jedi, Palpatine didn't sense the anomaly through the Force. He recognized it through its absence. The dark side of the Force was Palpatine's domain, his weapon, his very essence. He had spent decades perfecting his ability to manipulate its currents, to hide himself within shadows while orchestrating the Republic's destruction. But now, for the first time since he'd begun his grand design, he felt something his powers couldn't touch. Something his vast network of spies and surveillance hadn't detected arriving. Something that simply was. Palpatine's fingers clenched behind his back. He had spent years ensuring every variable was controlled, every piece positioned perfectly for Order 66 and the Empire's rise. The appearance of an unknown element, especially one he couldn't perceive or manipulate through the Force, represented a threat to everything. "Captain," he said softly, activating his comlink. "The plaza below my office. The elderly man on the bench. I want him identified and monitored." Discreetly. "Yes, Chancellor," came the immediate response. On his bench, the old man smiled slightly, as though hearing both conversations, the Jedi Council's concern and the Sith Lord's paranoia. He turned to a fresh page in his sketchpad and began drawing a young man with intense eyes and a scarred face. Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, the fulcrum upon which this galaxy's fate would turn. The artist's stylus captured the Jedi Knight's conflicted expression perfectly, the darkness growing behind his eyes like storm clouds gathering on a distant horizon. The One above all, for that was his name in another universe, another story, studied his sketch with the critical eye of a creator examining his work. Except this wasn't his work. This was someone else's story, another narrative within the infinite tapestry of creation. He was simply a visitor here, an observer stepping between pages to witness how this particular tale unfolded. But observation, he knew, was never truly passive. The act of witnessing changed what was witnessed. His presence here, even masked, even restrained, would alter events. The question that had brought him to this galaxy, in this moment, was whether alteration served the story or betrayed it. A young Twi'lek girl, no more than 6, broke away from her mother's hand and approached the bench with a child's fearless curiosity. She stared at the sketch of Anakin. "That's a Jedi," she exclaimed. "Are you drawing the heroes?" The old man smiled gently. "I'm drawing people," he said, his voice warm and textured like aged wood. "Whether they're heroes or not, that's for them to decide." "But Jedi are always heroes," the girl insisted with absolute certainty. "They protect us from the bad guys." "Are they?" The artist tilted his head. "Even when they make mistakes? Even when they fail? Even when they become the very thing they swore to destroy?" The girl frowned, confused by concepts too large for her young mind. Her mother hurried over, apologizing for the interruption and pulling her daughter away. The old man watched them go, then returned to his sketch. He added details to Anakin's portrait, a mechanical hand, burn scars not yet suffered, a respirator mask that cast the young Jedi's face in permanent shadow. "If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy," the old man murmured to himself, as though speaking to an audience beyond this universe's boundaries, "hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you." The words hung in the air strangely, as though acknowledging the fourth wall of reality itself. Across the plaza, Senate guards moved into position, attempting to be subtle in their surveillance. In the Jedi Temple, Masters Windu and Kenobi prepared to investigate the disturbance Yoda sensed. And in his office, Palpatine watched with growing unease as the old man continued sketching, page after page, capturing moments that hadn't happened yet. The One above all knew what was coming. He had seen countless universes rise and fall, witnessed infinite variations of triumph and tragedy. He knew Anakin would fall. He knew the Jedi would burn. He knew the Empire would rise and eventually crumble, giving way to new stories, new conflicts, new generations struggling against darkness. He could stop it all with a thought. Rewrite the narrative. Save the doomed and damn the saved. But should he? The question had brought him here, to this bench, in this moment. And as the sun set over Coruscant's endless cityscape, casting long shadows that seemed to reach toward him like grasping fingers, the one above all prepared to discover whether even an omnipotent being could, or should, change a story already written in the stars. The Jedi Temple's meditation gardens occupied a rare open space on Coruscant, a carefully cultivated reminder of nature amid endless durasteel and transparasteel. Ancient trees imported from a dozen worlds grew in deliberate harmony, their roots intertwining beneath stone pathways where generations of Jedi had walked in contemplation. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood among these trees now, his eyes closed, his breathing measured as he reached into the Force. He found nothing. Not emptiness, that would have been comprehensible, even expected in certain dark side voids or Force-dead spaces scattered across the galaxy. This was different. The Force flowed normally everywhere except around one specific point in the Senate District. There, it simply curved, like light bending around a gravitational singularity. The Force acknowledged something existed but couldn't penetrate it, couldn't define it, couldn't even properly avoid it. Master Kenobi? Anakin Skywalker's voice interrupted his meditation. The younger Jedi Knight approached with his characteristic confident stride, his Padawan learner Ahsoka Tano following close behind. The Council sent word you needed me. Obi-Wan opened his eyes, studying his former apprentice with the mixture of pride and concern that had become habitual over the years. Anakin had grown into a formidable warrior, perhaps the most naturally gifted Jedi of his generation. But the darkness Obi-Wan occasionally sensed in him, the anger, the attachment, the fear of loss, troubled the Council deeply. Master Yoda's cryptic warnings about Anakin's future had intensified lately, though the diminutive master refused to elaborate on what his visions showed. There's been a disturbance, Obi-Wan explained, gesturing for them to walk with him toward the temple's main entrance. Master Yoda sensed something unusual near the Senate building. A presence that exists outside the Force. Outside the Force? Ahsoka's head-tails twitched with skepticism. That's impossible, Master. Everything living connects to the Force. One would think, Obi-Wan agreed. Yet Master Yoda was quite certain. He's asked us to investigate discreetly. The Chancellor has also expressed concern about an unidentified individual in the Senate Plaza. Anakin's expression darkened at the mention of Palpatine. Over the years, the Chancellor had become something of a mentor to the young Jedi, offering guidance and friendship that Anakin cherished. The Council's growing suspicion of Palpatine's expanded powers during the war had created tension between Anakin and his fellow Jedi, another source of conflict in a soul already stretched thin. If the Chancellor is worried, we should take this seriously, Anakin said firmly. The Separatists could have developed some new technology to hide from Force detection. Dooku's been experimenting with all kinds of Sith alchemy. Perhaps, Obi-Wan replied, though his tone suggested doubt. Master Yoda seemed to believe this was something far older than Dooku's machinations. Something that predates even the Sith themselves. They descended through the temple's multiple levels, passing meditation chambers where younglings practiced their kata, archives where scholars pored over ancient texts, and training rooms where the sound of clashing lightsabers echoed through Force-reinforced walls. The temple had stood for millennia, a beacon of light-side dedication and Jedi philosophy. Yet lately, Obi-Wan couldn't shake the feeling that shadows were lengthening within these sacred halls, as though something fundamental was approaching its end. The plaza outside the Senate building teemed with evening activity when the three Jedi arrived. Senators and their entourages hurried toward waiting airspeeders, discussing votes and political maneuvering. Lobbyists clustered in small groups, trading information and favors. Tourists captured holos of the imposing government architecture. Everything appeared perfectly normal. Except for the old man on the bench. Anakin stopped walking the moment he saw him. His hand instinctively moved to his lightsaber, though he didn't ignite it. Beside him, Ahsoka gasped softly, her eyes widening. Even Obi-Wan, who had thought himself prepared for any anomaly, felt his breath catch. The Force didn't touch the elderly figure. More accurately, the Force encountered him and became confused, flowing around him like water around a stone while simultaneously acting as though nothing obstructed its path. Looking at him created a strange cognitive dissonance. He was clearly present, solid, real, yet something about him suggested he existed on a different level of reality than everything else. Ahsoka started, then stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Her Leku patterns flushed with colors that betrayed her unease. Yes, Obi-Wan agreed quietly. That's him. The old man looked up from his sketching as the three Jedi approached. His eyes met Anakin's first, and in that moment, something passed between them that made the Chosen One's blood run cold. Recognition. Not of having met before, but of being known completely, utterly, down to every secret fear and hidden darkness. The old man's expression held no judgment, only a deep sadness that suggested he'd seen this particular tragedy play out countless times before. Master Jedi, the elderly artist greeted them with a warm smile that didn't quite reach those ancient eyes. I've been expecting you. Please, sit. I imagine you have questions. Obi-Wan exchanged glances with Anakin before carefully settling onto the bench, maintaining enough distance to react if the stranger proved hostile. Ahsoka remained standing, her hands near her lightsabers, while Anakin positioned himself to the old man's right, effectively boxing him in. Standard Jedi tactical positioning when confronting unknown threats. The stranger seemed amused by their caution. I assure you, I mean no harm. I'm merely an observer, an artist documenting stories as they unfold. He gestured to his sketchpad. Would you like to see? Before Obi-Wan could respond, Anakin reached out with the Force to sense the old man's intentions, to read his surface thoughts as Jedi were trained to do with potential adversaries. The moment his consciousness touched that infinite presence, Anakin's mind recoiled as though burned. Images flooded through him, galaxies forming and dying, universes stacked like pages in an endless book, himself standing in darkness with yellow eyes while younglings screamed, Padme dying in childbirth, twins separated at birth, a Death Star exploding, balance finally achieved through sacrifice. Anakin staggered backward, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead. What are you? The old man's expression grew sorrowful. I'm sorry, Anakin. I tried to keep my shields tight, but when you reached out, he shook his head. You weren't meant to see that. Not yet. Not like this. You know my name. It wasn't a question. Anakin's hand now gripped his lightsaber hilt, though something prevented him from drawing the weapon. Perhaps survival instinct. Perhaps the certain knowledge that this being couldn't be harmed by plasma blades or force powers or anything in the Jedi arsenal. I know all of your names, the old man confirmed gently. He turned to Obi-Wan. Master Kenobi, who will lose everything he loves yet remain the wisest of his order. Then to Ahsoka, young Tano, who will choose to walk away and survive when others fall. Back to Anakin, and Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, who will bring balance to the Force in ways no one expects. Obi-Wan stood smoothly, his hand now openly on his weapon. I think you need to come with us to the temple. The council will want to speak with you. I'm sure they would, the artist replied, making no move to resist or flee. Master Yoda is particularly curious about me. He senses that I exist beyond the Force, and that troubles him deeply. As it should. The Jedi have built their entire philosophy on the Force's omnipresence. Discovering something that exists outside it challenges foundational beliefs. Then you admit you're not connected to the Force? Ahsoka asked, her tactical mind recognizing the strategic implications. If someone could exist outside the Force, they would be immune to Jedi abilities, invisible to precognition, immune to mental influence, untouchable by telekinesis. The Force is a beautiful creation, the old man said, standing slowly with the careful movements of someone whose body remembered age even if it transcended such limitations. A mystical energy field that binds the galaxy together, giving certain individuals remarkable abilities. Light and dark, locked in eternal conflict, each defining the other through opposition. It's an elegant narrative structure. Narrative structure? Obi-Wan's eyes narrowed. You speak of the Force as though it's fictional. The artist tilted his head, considering his words carefully. Not fictional. But structured. Shaped by certain rules, certain patterns that repeat. The Chosen One prophecy, for instance. The eternal cycle of Sith and Jedi. The way darkness rises just when hope seems brightest, and light emerges from the deepest despair. These aren't random occurrences. They're story beats, narrative arcs that this galaxy follows because, he paused, as though deciding how much truth these warriors could handle. Because stories have their own kind of gravity. Anakin's hand trembled on his lightsaber. The visions that had flooded through him when he touched the old man's mind still burned behind his eyes. He'd seen himself become something monstrous, something that would haunt his nightmares if he survived long enough to sleep again. But he'd also seen redemption, seen his children grow strong, seen balance achieved through terrible sacrifice. You showed me the future, Anakin said, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. You showed me things I can't, things I won't let happen. Did I show you the future? The old man asked gently. Or did I show you one possible story among infinite variations? The question of whether destiny is fixed or mutable is one that philosophers across countless realities have debated. In some universes, fate is immutable, the story is written and must play out exactly as authored. In others, free will allows for infinite branching paths, each choice creating new possibilities. He met Anakin's tortured gaze with infinite compassion. Which kind of universe do you think this is? Before Anakin could respond, a squad of Senate guards arrived, led by a stern-faced commander who positioned his troops in a loose perimeter around the bench. By order of Chancellor Palpatine, you are to accompany us for questioning regarding your unauthorized presence in a restricted governmental area. The Jedi and Senate guards stared at each other with obvious tension. Jurisdictional disputes between the Jedi Order and Republic security forces had intensified as the war dragged on, with Palpatine's administration steadily eroding Jedi authority through bureaucratic maneuvering. This individual is a potential Force threat, Obi-Wan stated firmly. The Jedi Council has jurisdiction. The Chancellor disagrees, the Guard Commander replied. You may observe the questioning, but the suspect will be held in Senate custody. The old man watched this political dance with sad understanding. It's already beginning, he murmured, too softly for the guards to hear but perfectly audible to Jedi senses. The divisions, the mistrust, the slow erosion of unity that will make Order 66 possible. Neither side realizes they're playing exactly the roles assigned to them. What did you say? Obi-Wan demanded. The artist looked at him with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of infinite civilizations. I said I'll come willingly. There's no need for conflict between Jedi and guards. Not today. That particular tragedy comes later. He gathered his sketchpad, tucking the stylus carefully into a pocket. Though I should warn you, questioning me will raise far more questions than it answers. Some truths are heavier than mortals are meant to carry. As the Senate guards moved to escort him toward their holding facility, the old man paused and looked back at Anakin. The visions you saw aren't inevitable, he said quietly. But avoiding them will require choices you're not prepared to make. The question you'll face soon is whether saving the one you love is worth becoming the thing you hate. Choose carefully, Anakin Skywalker. The galaxy's fate turns on your decision. Then he allowed himself to be led away, an elderly artist who sketched futures not yet written, leaving three Jedi standing in stunned silence as Coruscant's artificial lights began flickering on against the gathering darkness. The Senate Guard holding facility occupied the lower levels of the governmental complex, far from the grand chambers where democracy's theater played out for the galaxy's cameras. Here, in windowless rooms reinforced with durasteel and ray shielding, those who threatened Republic security, or merely inconvenienced powerful senators, could be questioned away from public scrutiny. The old man sat in one such room now, his hands resting calmly on a metal table while surveillance equipment monitored his every breath. He wasn't restrained. The guards had quickly discovered that binders, force fields, and even the room's neural suppression systems had no effect on him. The equipment functioned perfectly, registering active status on all monitoring stations, yet somehow failed to actually constrain the prisoner. After the third set of binders simply fell through his wrists as though he were incorporeal, the guards had given up and simply watched him carefully, blasters ready. Obi-Wan Kenobi observed through the one-way transparisteel, Anakin and Ahsoka flanking him. Behind them, a Senate intelligence officer reviewed scanner data with growing frustration. "This is impossible," the officer muttered, cycling through different sensor frequencies. "Biological scanners register him as human, elderly, approximately 80 standard years, no cybernetic augmentation. But energy scanners show nothing. Literally nothing. As if he's not there at all." "He's there," Anakin said darkly. His connection to the Force still throbbed where it had touched that infinite consciousness, like a limb remembering phantom pain. "He's more there than anything I've ever encountered." The door to the observation room slid open, and Chancellor Palpatine entered with his characteristic measured grace. His grandfatherly features arranged themselves in concerned curiosity as he approached the viewport, studying the elderly prisoner. Obi-Wan bowed respectfully. "Chancellor. I didn't realize you'd be personally overseeing the interrogation. When my security chief reports an individual who cannot be scanned, restrained, or identified by any technology in the Republic arsenal, I take notice, Master Kenobi." Palpatine's voice carried that warm, reasonable tone that had convinced the Senate to grant him emergency powers year after year. Especially when the Jedi Council identifies the same individual as a disturbance in the Force. "What can you tell me about our mysterious guest?" Obi-Wan chose his words carefully, aware that anything he said would be analyzed by one of the galaxy's most cunning political minds. "He appears to exist outside the Force, something Master Yoda finds deeply troubling. When Anakin attempted to sense his intentions, he received disturbing visions." Palpatine's eyes flickered toward Anakin with what appeared to be fatherly concern. "Visions? My boy, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Chancellor." Anakin's jaw clenched. He hadn't told Obi-Wan everything he'd seen in those fractured images, the yellow eyes, the respirator, the feeling of standing over Padme's body while she slipped away. Some horrors were too personal to share, even with his former master. Through the viewport, the old man looked up directly at where Palpatine stood, despite the one-way nature of the transparisteel. His lips curved in a small, knowing smile. Palpatine's composure cracked for just an instant, his eyes widening fractionally before control reasserted itself. "Perhaps I should speak with him," the Chancellor said smoothly. "If he has information about separatist plots or new Sith capabilities, the Republic needs to know." "With respect, Chancellor," Obi-Wan interjected carefully, "the Jedi Council believes this falls under our jurisdiction. The individual's connection, or lack thereof, to the Force makes this a matter for the Order to investigate." Tension crystallized in the room. Anakin shifted uncomfortably, caught between loyalty to his friend Palpatine and his obligations to the Jedi. Ahsoka watched the political maneuvering with the alert awareness of someone learning how far the war had corrupted institutional relationships. Before the standoff could escalate, the old man stood in his cell and walked calmly toward the door. The durasteel barrier, designed to withstand thermal detonators, simply ceased to exist as he approached, reality reorganizing itself around his presence. The door didn't open. It just wasn't there anymore, as though it had never been. Alarms shrieked. Guards raised their weapons. The Jedi ignited their lightsabers in fluid, synchronized motion. And the old man walked into the observation room with no more concern than someone entering a cafe. "Gentlemen, lady," he greeted them pleasantly, nodding to each in turn. His eyes settled on Palpatine last, and something passed between them, recognition, acknowledgement, perhaps even a greeting between entities that understood each other in ways the others couldn't grasp. "I believe we should speak plainly. These games of interrogation and jurisdiction waste time none of us can afford." Palpatine's hand moved subtly toward the hidden comlink that would summon his red guard, but he stopped, realizing that whatever this being was, guards would be useless. Instead, he smiled his political smile. "I'm Chancellor Palpatine. And you are?" "Many things, by many names, across infinite realities." The old man's gaze held the Sith Lords with uncomfortable directness. "But you may call me what I was called in another universe, the one above all. Though titles matter little. What matters is why I'm here, in this particular story, at this particular moment." Story. Obi-Wan's lightsaber remained ignited, its blue blade humming softly. "You keep using that word. What do you mean?" The one above all gestured to the chairs around the observation room's briefing table. "May I sit? This explanation will take time, and these old bones tire easily." He smiled at his own irony, a being of infinite power choosing to manifest as elderly and weary. Anakin positioned himself between the stranger and Palpatine, protective instincts overriding caution. "Answer Master Kenobi's question first. What do you mean by story?" The ancient entity settled into a chair with a soft sigh, and for a moment looked genuinely tired, not physically, but with the exhaustion of one who had witnessed too much, understood too deeply. "Tell me, Anakin Skywalker, what is the prophecy of the Chosen One?" Anakin's face hardened. "A Jedi will come who will bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. And do you believe in this prophecy?" Anakin hesitated, glancing at Obi-Wan. "The Council believes I'm the Chosen One. Whether I believe it doesn't matter." "But it does matter," the one above all said gently. "Because prophecy is narrative structure made manifest. It's the universe telling itself a story about what must happen. The Chosen One isn't just a prediction, it's a role, a function within the galaxy's tale. And you've been cast in that role whether you wanted it or not." Palpatine's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You speak of destiny as though it's authored by some external force. Isn't it?" The old man turned his infinite gaze on the Sith Lord, and Palpatine felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, genuine uncertainty. "You've orchestrated this war, manipulated both sides, positioned every piece for your grand design. You believe you control the narrative, Chief Palpatine. But what if you're simply playing the role assigned to you? The Dark Lord who corrupts the Chosen One, who destroys the Jedi, who builds an empire that ultimately falls so that balance can be restored." The use of Palpatine's true name sent shock waves through the room. Obi-Wan's blade snapped toward the Chancellor, Ahsoka's twin sabers ignited with twin hisses, and Anakin stood frozen between them, his face a mask of confusion and dawning horror. "Chief Palpatine." Obi-Wan's voice was deadly calm. "Chancellor, are you going to deny what he just called you?" Palpatine's mask of friendly concern cracked, and for just a moment, the darkness beneath showed through, ancient, malevolent, contemptuous of the Jedi who had failed to see what stood before them for years. Then the mask reasserted itself, and he laughed softly. "An interesting accusation from a being who won't identify himself. Should I be concerned that the Jedi believe the word of someone who can't be scanned or constrained by our technology? His name is correct, isn't it?" The one above all's voice carried absolute certainty. "Your birth name, before you took the title Darth Sidious. Before you murdered your master Darth Plagueis. Before you spent 50 years orchestrating the destruction of the Jedi Order and the Republic's transformation into your empire." The room exploded into motion. Anakin's lightsaber ignited, his face twisted in anguish, loyalty to Palpatine warring with dawning realization. Obi-Wan moved to restrain the Chancellor, his blade held in perfect Sorisu defensive form. Ahsoka circled right, cutting off escape routes. And Palpatine simply stood, his aged features transforming as the illusion of weakness fell away. His eyes burned yellow with Sith corruption, his posture straightening with predatory grace. The Force itself seemed to congeal around him, darkness made manifest. "Foolish," Palpatine hissed, his voice dropping into Sidious's malevolent rasp. "You think this changes anything? The pieces are already in motion. The clones are programmed. The Jedi scattered across the galaxy, vulnerable and isolated. And you, Anakin, my greatest masterpiece, already halfway to the dark side, drowning in attachments the Jedi forbade you to have. Anakin's hand trembled on his lightsaber. No. You're my friend. You've guided me, believed in me when the Council didn't. I groomed you, Sidious corrected with cruel clarity. From the moment Kagan brought you to Coruscant, I recognized what you were, raw power, infinite potential, and emotional vulnerability that made you mine for the taking. Every kind word, every encouragement, every time I took your side against the Council, all manipulation, boy. All part of the plan. The one above all watched this revelation unfold with deep sadness. This was the moment, the point where Anakin's carefully constructed worldview shattered, where the darkness waiting inside him could flood through the cracks. In the visions he'd shown the young Jedi, this revelation had come differently, at a different time. By exposing Palpatine now, he'd changed the story's trajectory. But had he changed it for the better? You know what happens next, the old man said quietly to Sidious. You can feel the decision approaching. The moment where Anakin chooses between the Jedi way and the power to save what he loves. I've accelerated that moment, brought it to now instead of months from now in your carefully planned timeline. Sidious's yellow eyes fixed on the entity with calculating hatred. You're not of this galaxy. Not of this reality. You're a contaminant in my design, an author from another story interfering with mine. I don't know what you are, but I know you can be removed. Lightning erupted from the Sith Lord's fingers, not the restrained display he'd used in the past but raw, devastating force energy that had killed Jedi Masters. It lanced toward the one above all with enough power to reduce a human to ash. The lightning stopped an inch from the old man's chest, crackling harmlessly in mid-air as though encountering an invisible wall. No, not a wall. The lightning simply ceased to be relevant, its energy transitioning from existence to non-existence without fanfare or resistance. I told you, the one above all said sadly. I exist beyond the Force. Your power has no purchase on me, Sidious. No more than a character's actions can harm the author who writes them. Obi-Wan seized the moment of distraction, moving with Jedi speed to place himself between Sidious and the door. Guards! Seal the facility. The Chancellor is under arrest for treason. Sidious laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Arrest me? You don't understand. I am the Senate. I am the Republic. And with one word, I can activate Order 66 and end every Jedi in the galaxy. Not every Jedi, Ahsoka said quietly, her sabers held in perfect Jarkai-ready stance. And not without a fight. Anakin stood frozen, his lightsaber still ignited but held at his side, his face a landscape of agony. The one above all could see the thoughts racing through the young man's mind, Palpatine's betrayal, the visions of Padme dying, the Council's distrust, the temptation of dark side power that promised solutions the Jedi way couldn't provide. This was the pivot point. The moment where infinite possibilities collapsed into one choice. Anakin, the old man said gently, drawing the chosen one's tortured gaze. What you do in the next few seconds will determine not just your fate, but the galaxy's. I can see all the possible futures branching from this moment. In some, you strike down Sidious and remain a Jedi. In others, you defend him and become Darth Vader. In still others, you walk away from both, forging your own path. Don't listen to him. Sidious commanded, his voice resonating with dark side compulsion. He's trying to manipulate you, just like the Jedi. They all want to control you, use your power for their purposes. Only I have given you true friendship, true guidance. He's lying, Obi-Wan said, his voice breaking with emotion. Anakin, please. You're my brother. Don't let him twist you into something dark. Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, the slave boy from Tatooine who had become the galaxy's greatest warrior, looked from Sidious to Obi-Wan to the one above all. His hand tightened on his lightsaber. And the future hung in perfect, terrible balance. Anakin's lightsaber trembled in his grip, its blue plasma blade casting harsh shadows across his anguished face. Every relationship that had defined him stood in this room: Obi-Wan, his mentor and brother; Palpatine, the father figure who had offered understanding when the Council gave only criticism; Ahsoka, the apprentice who represented his hope for the Jedi's future; and this ancient being who claimed to exist beyond the Force itself, who had shown him visions of horrors he might become. "I don't," Anakin's voice cracked. "I don't know what's real anymore." The one above all rose slowly from his chair, moving with deliberate care to seem non-threatening. "That's because you're caught between two stories, Anakin. The story Sidious has written for you, where you fall to darkness, destroy everything you love, and spend decades as his enforcer before finally achieving redemption through sacrifice. And the story the Jedi tell, where the Chosen One brings balance through simple destruction of the Sith." He paused, letting the words sink in. But what if both stories are wrong? What if balance doesn't come through serving either light or dark, but through transcending the duality itself? "Philosophical nonsense," Sidious spat, his yellow eyes fixed on Anakin with predatory intensity. "The universe respects only power, boy. The Jedi fear your strength, chain you with their codes and restrictions. I offer freedom, the power to shape reality according to your will, to save those you love from death itself." Obi-Wan stepped closer to Anakin, his lightsaber lowering slightly in a gesture of trust. "The dark side offers only corruption disguised as power, Anakin. I know you feel the Council has doubted you, and perhaps we have. But that doubt comes from concern, not fear. We see your potential for greatness and worry that your attachments will lead you astray." "Attachments?" Anakin's voice rose with sudden fury. "You mean my wife? The woman I love, who you forced me to hide for years because the Jedi forbid what makes us human? You talk about concern, but you've made me choose between love and duty since the moment I became a Padawan." The admission hung in the air like a detonator's countdown. Ahsoka's eyes widened. She'd suspected her master had feelings for Senator Amidala, but hearing him admit to a secret marriage shocked her. Obi-Wan's face fell, a mixture of disappointment and understanding washing across his features. "Padme," Obi-Wan breathed. "How long?" "Since Geonosis. Since the war began." Anakin's words tumbled out now, the secret he'd carried for years finally breaking free. "And now she's pregnant, and I've been having visions, terrible visions of her dying in childbirth. I see it every night, Master. I watch her die, and I can't stop it, and the Jedi way offers me nothing but acceptance of her death." Sidious's smile was terrible in its triumph. "You see, the Jedi have already lost him. Their precious dogma, their fear of emotion, their denial of basic human needs, all of it drove him straight to me. I didn't corrupt Anakin Skywalker. The Jedi Order did that themselves." The one above all watched this moment with infinite sadness, recognizing it as the culmination of systemic failures on both sides. The Jedi had become so rigid in their philosophy that they forgot compassion. The Sith had twisted love itself into a weapon. And Anakin, caught between them, was being torn apart by forces he couldn't control. "Both of you are right," the old man said quietly, and every eye turned to him. "The Jedi Order has become dogmatic, prioritizing detachment over compassion, rules over wisdom. Their fear of the dark side has made them rigid, unable to adapt to a changing galaxy. And Sidious is correct that Anakin's power has been suppressed by masters who fear what he might become." He turned to the Sith Lord. "But you're also wrong, both of you. The Jedi err in denying emotion, but emotion twisted into obsession, as you've cultivated in Anakin, is equally destructive. Who are you to judge?" Sidious demanded, dark side energy crackling around his fingers. "You claim to exist beyond the Force, beyond this reality. What gives you the right to interfere in our galaxy's fate?" "Nothing gives me the right," the one above all admitted freely. "I'm an outsider, a visitor to your story. In my own reality, I am the one above all, the supreme being of a multiverse filled with heroes and villains, gods and mortals, infinite stories of triumph and tragedy. I've watched universes rise and fall, seen every variation of conflict and resolution imaginable. His ancient eyes held a weight of experience that made even Sidious uncomfortable. And I've learned that the greatest stories, the ones that matter, are those where characters choose their own paths despite the roles assigned to them. Stories, Obi-Wan said slowly, his tactical mind working through implications. You keep speaking of our galaxy as though it's a narrative, something written rather than lived. Isn't it? The old man gestured to the room around them. Your prophecies, your cyclical conflicts between light and dark, the way Force-sensitive families produce pivotal figures generation after generation. The Skywalker line itself, Anakin, conceived by the Force itself, destined to bring balance. Then his children, who will continue the story, fighting the empire he creates. He met Anakin's shocked gaze. Yes, Anakin. Twins. A boy and girl who will be separated at birth to protect them from you and Sidious. Who will grow up strangers, only to discover their connection and help destroy the empire you'll help build. Anakin staggered as though struck. Twins? I'm going to have twins. In the story as it's currently written, the one above all confirmed. Luke and Leia. Hidden from you after Padme dies, or appears to die, in childbirth. Luke raised on Tatooine by your stepbrother, Leia adopted into Alderaanian royalty. Both powerful in the Force, both destined to oppose Darth Vader without knowing he's their father. His voice grew soft with compassion. Until the day Luke discovers the truth and must choose whether to kill you or redeem you. No. Anakin's shout reverberated through the room, raw with anguish. I won't let that happen. I won't become the monster you showed me, I won't let Padme die, I won't. Then choose differently, the one above all interrupted gently. That's why I'm here, Anakin. To offer you something neither the Jedi nor the Sith can, awareness of the story you're trapped in and the chance to rewrite it. Sidious moved with sudden violence, Force lightning erupting in a storm of energy directed not at the immune entity but at Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. The Jedi Masters raised their lightsabers to absorb the attack, their blades catching the deadly electricity, but the sheer power behind Sidious's assault drove them backward, their feet sliding across the floor. Anakin. Sidious commanded, his voice resonating with decades of manipulation. They know your secret now. They'll expel you from the Order, take you from Padme, forbid you from seeing your children. Only I can teach you the power to save her, the power of Darth Plagueis, who could influence the midichlorians to create life and prevent death. Anakin's lightsaber rose, but whether to defend or attack, even he didn't seem to know. His face twisted with agony, fear, rage, and desperate hope all warring for dominance. The dark side swirled around him like a living thing, seductive and terrible, promising solutions the Jedi way couldn't provide. The one above all extended his hand, and reality itself paused. The lightning froze in mid-arc, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka suspended in defensive stances, Sidious caught mid-gesture. Only Anakin remained mobile, gasping as time stopped around him. This is what I can offer, the old man said quietly into the silence. A moment outside the story, where you can think clearly without manipulation from either side. Where you can choose based on who you are, not who others want you to become. Anakin looked around wildly at the frozen tableau. What did you do? Gave you time. In this moment, the rest of the universe continues normally, but for us, seconds will stretch as long as necessary. The one above all moved to stand beside the young Jedi. Let me tell you what happens in the story as it's currently written. You choose to serve Sidious, believing he can teach you to save Padme. You become Darth Vader. You march on the Jedi Temple with clone troopers and slaughter everyone inside, masters, knights, Padawans, younglings. You execute Order 66 across the galaxy, hunting down your former friends and allies. You will, consumed by dark side corruption and desperate to prove your commitment to Sidious. Then you travel to Mustafar to eliminate the separatist leaders, completing Sidious's plan to end the war on his terms. Padme follows you there, horrified by what you've become. Obi-Wan confronts you. You choke Padme in your rage, the very woman you fell to darkness to save. The old man's voice held infinite sorrow. Obi-Wan defeats you, leaves you burning alive on the volcanic shore. Sidious retrieves you, encases you in a life support suit, and you spend the next 2 decades as his enforcer, believing you killed Padme and your children. Until the day Luke Skywalker appears, and you begin the long road to redemption. Tears streamed down Anakin's face. There has to be another way. There are infinite ways, the one above all said. That's the point I'm trying to make. The story Sidious has planned isn't inevitable. The prophecy the Jedi cling to isn't immutable. You have choice, Anakin. Real choice. Not the illusion of freedom Sidious offers, where you trade one master for another. Not the constrained choice the Jedi permit, where you can only act within their rigid code. True choice, the ability to forge your own path. But the visions, Anakin protested desperately. I see Padme dying. You confirmed she dies in childbirth. In one version of events, yes. In the version where you fall to darkness, where your actions become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The old man placed a gentle hand on Anakin's shoulder. But consider this, perhaps the reason she dies in childbirth isn't medical. Perhaps it's because she loses the will to live, her heart broken by what you've become. The medical droids say as much in that timeline. She's perfectly healthy physically, but she gives up because the man she loved has become a monster. The words hit Anakin like a physical blow. All this time, he'd assumed the visions showed an unavoidable medical complication, something only dark side power could prevent. But if his own actions caused her death? So if I don't fall, Anakin said slowly, hope flickering in his voice, she lives. Perhaps. Or perhaps she still dies, and you must learn to accept loss without letting it destroy you. That's the terrifying truth about free will, Anakin. I can show you possibilities, but I can't guarantee outcomes. Even I, with all my power, cannot write someone else's story for them without violating the fundamental principle of choice. Anakin stood silent for a long moment, staring at the frozen scene around him. His master, his apprentice, the Sith Lord who had manipulated him for years, all waiting for his decision. The decision that would define not just his fate, but the galaxies. What do you think I should do? He finally asked. The one above all smiled sadly. If I told you, it wouldn't be your choice. It would be me writing your story, making you a puppet dancing to a different tune. The whole point is that you must decide based on your own values, your own understanding of right and wrong. But I don't know what's right. Anakin's voice broke with frustration. The Jedi say attachment is wrong, that I should let go of Padme if the Force wills her death. Palpatine says love is natural, that using any power necessary to save her is justified. You say both are wrong, but you won't tell me what's right. Because right is something you must define for yourself, the old man replied gently. That's what separates true heroes from those following orders or scripts. Heroes choose their own values and live by them, even when the cost is terrible. Even when the choice leads to suffering. He gestured to the frozen Obi-Wan. Your master loves you, Anakin. His disappointment about your marriage comes from genuine concern, not dogmatic rigidity. He fears the attachments will consume you, and in many timelines, he's right to fear that. Then to Sidious. And this one offers you power through corruption. He speaks truth about the Jedi's failures, but only to bind you to a darker master. The power he promises to save Padme. It comes at the cost of everything you are. Finally, to Ahsoka. And your apprentice represents hope. A new generation that might learn from the old order's mistakes, that might find balance where their predecessors found only rigid extremes. Anakin looked at each frozen figure, then back to the one above all. If you won't guide me, why are you here? Why show me all this? Because stories matter, the old man said simply. And sometimes, characters deserve to know they're more than their assigned roles. You asked what you should do, Anakin. Let me ask instead, who do you want to be? Not the chosen one, not a Jedi Knight, not a Sith Lord. Who is Anakin Skywalker when all the titles and prophecies are stripped away? The question hung in the frozen moment, waiting for an answer that would reshape the galaxy's fate. Anakin Skywalker stood in the frozen moment, surrounded by the pause and reality that the one above all had granted him. The question echoed in his mind, who was he, stripped of all roles and expectations? For so long, he'd defined himself by what others told him he should be. A slave who became free. A Jedi who followed the code. The chosen one destined to bring balance. A husband hiding his love because the order forbade it. A friend to Palpatine who valued his counsel above the council's wisdom. But who was he when all those layers were removed? Anakin started, then stopped, realizing he didn't know how to complete the sentence. I'm someone who wants to protect the people I love. Someone who believes the galaxy should be better than it is. Someone who's tired of being told I'm too emotional, too attached, too passionate, as though caring deeply is a flaw rather than a strength. The one above all nodded slowly. And what do you believe about right and wrong? Not what the Jedi taught you, not what Palpatine whispers in your ear. What does Anakin Skywalker believe? Anakin looked at the frozen lightning crackling between Sidious and his friends, seeing it with new clarity. I believe that using power to dominate others is wrong. That fear and hatred poison everything they touch. That the strong should protect the weak, not exploit them. He met the old man's eyes. I was a slave. I know what it means to be powerless, to be property rather than a person. The Jedi freed me from physical chains, but Palpatine, his voice hardened, Palpatine wants to enslave the entire galaxy, doesn't he? That's what the Empire will be. Slavery with a different name. Yes, the one above all confirmed. In the original timeline, Sidious transforms the Republic into an empire built on fear, oppression, and xenophobic tyranny. Trillions will suffer under his rule. Entire species will be enslaved or exterminated. And Darth Vader will be his primary enforcer, the dark shadow that makes the galaxy tremble. But the Jedi aren't blameless either, Anakin continued, his thoughts crystallizing as he spoke them aloud. They took me from my mother, forbade me from even visiting her. They trained me to be a warrior while preaching peace. They claim to serve the Force but have become servants of the Republic's corrupt Senate. Master Yoda is 900 years old, and in all that time, the Order hasn't evolved, hasn't questioned its own dogma. He looked at frozen Obi-Wan with complex emotions. And they made me lie about the most important relationship in my life, forced me to choose between love and duty as though the two couldn't coexist. So both sides have failed you, the old man observed. The question becomes, what do you do with that understanding? Some, faced with such failure, burn everything down in rage. Others withdraw entirely, abandoning the fight. Still others try to build something new from the ashes of broken institutions. Anakin was silent for a long moment, thinking through the implications of each path. The dark side still whispered seductively at the edges of his consciousness, promising the power to reshape everything according to his will. But he'd seen where that path led, saw himself choking Padme, saw the fear in younglings' eyes before he killed them, saw decades of servitude to Sidious wearing a black mask because his own rage had consumed him. The visions you showed me, Anakin said slowly. When I touched your mind. I saw darkness and horror, but I also saw redemption. I saw someone, Luke, my son, refusing to kill me even when I deserved it. Saw myself throwing Sidious down a reactor shaft to save my son's life. Saw myself die redeemed rather than live corrupted. He looked up, tears still on his face but something like clarity in his eyes. That version of me spent 20 years as a monster before finding redemption. But what if I could find it now? What if I could choose the light without waiting for my children to show me the way? The one above all's expression was proud and sad simultaneously. That would be a far more difficult path than you imagine, Anakin. Redemption earned in the aftermath of atrocity carries its own terrible poetry. But redemption chosen before the fall, redemption that prevents the atrocity entirely? That requires walking away from power when it's offered, accepting limitations when you could transcend them, trusting in hope when despair seems more realistic. I know. Anakin's hand tightened on his lightsaber. But I also know that if I serve Sidious, I become what I hated as a child. I become the master holding the chains. And if I let the dark side consume me to save Padme, I destroy the very thing I'm trying to preserve. I kill the man she fell in love with and replace him with a monster wearing his face. And the Jedi? The old man asked. Will you accept their judgment on your marriage? Their potential expulsion for breaking their code? Anakin laughed bitterly. The Jedi code has already broken me more than I've broken it. But no, I won't let them separate me from Padme, and I won't pretend love is shameful anymore. If they expel me, then I'll find another way to serve the light. Maybe it's time someone showed the galaxy that you can wield the Force for good without the Jedi's rigid dogma or the Sith's corruption. The one above all smiled genuinely for the first time since arriving in this galaxy. There it is. The choice that defines you. Not chosen one, not Jedi, not Sith, just Anakin Skywalker, deciding to forge his own path despite the consequences. But what about Padme? Anakin's voice cracked with renewed fear. The visions of her dying. Will you trust me on something? The old man interrupted gently. The visions you've been having are influenced by Sidious's manipulations. He's been using the Force to amplify your fears, to make the nightmares more vivid and frequent. Rage flashed across Anakin's face. He's been in my mind. Manipulating my dreams. For years. Subtle touches, nudges toward fear and paranoia. The dark side is insidious, Anakin. It doesn't announce itself with obvious corruption. It whispers, suggests, amplifies existing doubts until they consume you. The one above all placed both hands on Anakin's shoulders. Padme is strong, and the medical technology in this galaxy is advanced. There's no reason she can't survive childbirth if you're there to support her, as Anakin, not as a Sith Lord consumed by darkness. The visions show her dying because your fall breaks her heart, not because of inevitable medical complications. Hope warred with fear in Anakin's expression. You're sure? I cannot guarantee anything, the old man admitted. Free will means uncertainty. But I can tell you that in timelines where you don't fall to darkness, where you remain present and supportive, Padme's survival rate is significantly higher. Love isn't the problem, Anakin. It's fear of loss that destroys. The dark side feeds on that fear, turns it into possessiveness and control. The light side, true light, not the Jedi's emotionally suppressed version, embraces love while accepting that all things eventually end. Anakin took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside him. The dark whispers at the edge of his consciousness didn't disappear. The dark side was always there, always tempting, but they lost their grip on his soul. He thought of Padme, her smile, her strength, her unwavering belief in democracy and justice. Would she want him to become a monster to save her? Would she thank him for genocide committed in her name? He already knew the answer. Okay, Anakin said, his voice steady for the first time since this confrontation began. I know what I need to do. He looked at the one above all. But I have to do it myself. You can't intervene directly, can you? Not without violating that principle you talked about, not writing other people's stories. I shouldn't intervene, the old man corrected. I could. I have the power to stop Sidious with a thought, to rewrite reality so Order 66 never happens, to ensure the happy ending. But doing so would rob everyone in this galaxy of their agency, their ability to choose their own fates. It would make me no better than Sidious, just another tyrant imposing his will on unwilling subjects, even if my intentions were benevolent. Then why are you here at all? Anakin asked, genuinely curious now rather than accusatory. If you can't directly change things, why come to this galaxy? The one above all smiled enigmatically. Because sometimes, people need to know they're more than their assigned roles. Because witnessing matters, even when intervention doesn't. And because, he paused, considering his words carefully, because every story deserves the chance to surprise its author. I've given you knowledge, Anakin. I've shown you the paths ahead. But whether you use that knowledge to forge a new destiny or fall into the old patterns, that's your choice, your story to write. Anakin nodded slowly, understanding finally clicking into place. Then let's finish this. He looked at the frozen scene, Sidious's lightning, Obi-Wan's defensive stance, Ahsoka's determination. When you release the time stop, what happens? That depends entirely on you, the old man replied. The moment will resume exactly where it paused. Sidious will complete his attack. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka will defend themselves. And you'll have to choose, quickly, whose side you're on. I'm on my own side, Anakin said firmly. On the side of light without dogma, of love without possession, of power used to protect rather than dominate. He ignited his lightsaber, feeling the familiar weight and balance, seeing it now with new perspective. I'm on the side of the man Padme believes I can be, the teacher Ahsoka deserves, and the brother Obi-Wan has never stopped seeing in me, despite my failures. The one above all stepped back, pride evident in his ancient eyes. Then make your choice, Anakin Skywalker. And may the Force, or whatever power you choose to follow, be with you. Reality resumed with a thunderclap. Sidious's lightning lanced toward Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, deadly energy that would overwhelm their defenses in seconds. Obi-Wan's face was set with determination, preparing to sacrifice himself to buy Ahsoka time to escape. Ahsoka's twin sabers burned bright, her young face showing no fear, only resolve to protect her master and grandmaster. Anakin moved. Not toward Sidious to defend him, as the Sith Lord expected. Not away in confusion, as Obi-Wan feared. But directly into the path of the lightning, his lightsaber held in a modified gem so guard that caught the dark side energy across its blade. The sheer power of Sidious's attack drove Anakin backward, his boots sliding across the floor, muscles straining with effort. But he held. Anakin. Obi-Wan's voice mixed shock and hope. You made your choice. Sidious shrieked, his face contorting with rage. Foolish boy. I could have made you a god. Instead, you choose weakness, attachment, the failure of Jedi sentiment. You're wrong, Anakin gritted out, his lightsaber blazing as it absorbed and redirected the lightning into the walls around them. Love isn't weakness. Compassion isn't failure. And the Jedi way, for all its flaws, at least tries to serve something greater than personal power. His voice rose with conviction. I am the chosen one, not because prophecy demands it, but because I choose to bring balance. Balance between light and dark, between passion and peace, between love and duty. And that balance starts with stopping you. With a roar of effort, Anakin redirected the lightning back toward its source. Sidious cut off the attack with a snarl, his yellow eyes burning with hatred and calculation. Around them, alarms shrieked as the facility's sensors registered the massive force energy being unleashed. Senate guards would arrive soon. More Jedi would come. The confrontation was spiraling beyond control. Obi-Wan moved to Anakin's side, his lightsaber raised, his expression showing cautious relief and lingering concern. Anakin, your marriage can be discussed later, Anakin interrupted, not taking his eyes off Sidious. Right now, we have a Sith Lord to stop and a Republic to save from tyranny. Ahsoka flanked Anakin's other side, her twin sabers humming. Together, Master. Together, Snips. The one above all watched from the corner of the room, fading slowly from visibility like morning mist under a rising sun. His work here was done, or at least, his direct intervention was. He'd given Anakin knowledge and choice. What the young Jedi did with both would determine this galaxy's fate. But as he faded, the old man smiled. Because for the first time in this particular story, the ending wasn't written. The characters had seized the narrative, claiming agency over their own destinies. And that, more than any predetermined outcome, was worth celebrating. Sidious raised both hands, dark side energy coalescing around him like a living shadow. His mask of political civility had shattered completely, revealing the ancient malevolence beneath. You think stopping me changes anything? Order 66 is already programmed into every clone. The Jedi are scattered across the galaxy. With one word, I end your order forever. Then say it, Anakin challenged, his voice cold as space. Call in the guards. Activate Order 66. Do whatever you think you need to do. But know this, Sidious, whatever you try, I'll be there to stop you. Not as a Sith, not as your apprentice, but as someone who's seen the future you're trying to build and refuses to let it happen. The Sith Lord's eyes narrowed, recognizing that something fundamental had shifted. His carefully constructed plan, decades in the making, had encountered an unpredictable variable. Not the one above all directly, that entity was already fading from this reality. But Anakin Skywalker, armed with knowledge of the future and making choices that deviated from the script. In Sidious's mind, calculations raced. Could he still manipulate Anakin? Could he activate Order 66 now and salvage his plan? Could he escape and rebuild? The moment of decision stretched, suspended on the knife's edge between possibilities. And the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see which story would win. Sidious's yellow eyes flickered between the three Jedi standing against him, calculating odds and contingencies with the cold precision of a strategist who had orchestrated galactic war. The Senate Guard facility's alarms continued their shrill warning, and he could sense through the Force that Jedi reinforcements were en route, Masters Windu and Yoda among them, drawn by the massive dark side presence he could no longer hide. His grand design hadn't anticipated this moment. Not yet. Not like this. Very well, Sidious said, his voice dropping from rage into something far more dangerous, calm, measured calculation. You've made your choice, young Skywalker. How unfortunate. I had such grand plans for you. His hand moved subtly toward his robes, where a comlink was concealed. But if I cannot have my empire through you, I'll build it over your corpse. Anakin felt the intention spike through the Force a heartbeat before Sidious could activate the device. He reached out with his consciousness, not to attack but to influence, a technique the Jedi used rarely but had taught him nonetheless. The comlink circuitry fused, its components melting together as Anakin applied precise telekinetic pressure to its internal mechanisms. Sidious's face twisted with fury as the device sparked uselessly in his hand. Clever. But you cannot be everywhere, Anakin. Clone commanders across the galaxy await my signal. Eventually, I will reach them. Then we'd better make sure you don't leave this room, Obi-Wan stated, his Sorisu stance perfect, unbreakable. Behind that defensive mastery, his mind raced through the implications of what they'd learned. Palpatine was Sidious. The war had been orchestrated by a Sith Lord controlling both sides. Order 66 existed as a kill switch programmed into every clone trooper. The Republic had already fallen, they just hadn't realized it yet. The door to the interrogation wing exploded inward, blown apart by a controlled Force push. Mace Windu strode through the debris, his purple lightsaber ignited, his expression carved from stone. Behind him came Kit Fisto, Aegon Kohler, and C.C. Tyan, some of the Order's finest warriors, drawn by the disturbance in the Force. Chancellor Palpatine, Mace's voice resonated with barely controlled anger, or should I say, Darth Sidious. In the name of the Galactic Senate and the Jedi Order, you are under arrest for crimes against the Republic. Sidious laughed, the sound echoing with dark side corruption. The Senate? I am the Senate. And you, Master Windu, are a fool who has walked into precisely the trap I designed. His hands rose, lightning already crackling between his fingers. You come to arrest me with witnesses present, in a facility monitored by 100 surveillance systems. The galaxy will see the Jedi attacking the democratically elected Chancellor. My martyrdom will ensure the Order's destruction even if you somehow manage to kill me. The observation hit like a physical blow. Mace's eyes widened fractionally as he realized the strategic disaster unfolding. Every moment of this confrontation was being recorded, broadcast to security stations throughout the Senate complex. No matter what happened in this room, the narrative would be that Jedi attacked the Chancellor. He's been planning this for decades, Anakin said, stepping forward to address Mace while keeping Sidious in his peripheral vision. The war, the emergency powers, positioning himself as the Republic's savior while secretly controlling the Separatists. It's all been orchestrated to create the circumstances for the Jedi's elimination and the transformation of the Republic into an empire. Bold claims, young Skywalker, Sidious purred, his demeanor shifting into injured innocence for the cameras. Is this how the Jedi operate now? Assassinating political leaders based on paranoid conspiracies? Perhaps the Order has already fallen to darkness, and simply lacks the honesty to admit it. Mace's jaw clenched. He could feel the dark side radiating from Palpatine like heat from a sun, could sense the ancient Sith corruption that had hidden in plain sight for years. But proof and perception were different things. How could they convince the galaxy that its beloved Chancellor was a monster when he wore the face of a kindly grandfather? The one above all, now nearly invisible in the room's corner, watched the confrontation with deep concern. This was the moment where his interference had created unpredictable ripples. In the original timeline, Anakin's fall preceded this confrontation, giving Mace the righteous certainty to act decisively. Now, with Anakin standing with the Jedi, the moral clarity was muddied by political complications. Master Windu, Obi-Wan said urgently, he has a kill order programmed into the clone army. Order 66. It will command all clones to execute their Jedi commanders. He was waiting for the right moment to activate it. Preposterous. Sidious declared, his performance perfect for the surveillance feeds. These Jedi have clearly succumbed to paranoia. They see Sith conspiracies where none exist, project their own authoritarian impulses onto democratic institutions. I'm afraid the Clone Wars have damaged their judgment beyond repair. Kit Fisto's perpetual smile had vanished, his usually jovial demeanor replaced with cold calculation. If what Kenobi says is true, we need to verify the clone programming immediately. Contact the Kaminoans, examine the behavioral chips. There's no time, Anakin interrupted. He's stalling, trying to figure out how to escape or activate the order remotely. Every second we debate is a second he's planning his next move. Sidious's eyes flickered with grudging respect. You've learned to think strategically, young Skywalker. Perhaps I taught you better than I intended. The grandfatherly mask slipped entirely now, revealing the predator beneath. But you're correct, I am planning. Contingencies within contingencies. Did you think I'd rule the galaxy for decades without preparing for every possibility? The Sith Lord's presence in the Force suddenly exploded outward, a shockwave of dark side energy that sent everyone except Anakin and Mace staggering backward. In that moment of disruption, Sidious moved with speed that defied his apparent age. Two lightsabers materialized in his hands, not one, as in some timelines, but a pair of crimson blades that ignited with a shriek of corrupted kyber crystals. He launched himself at the Jedi Masters with acrobatic fury, his blades moving in intricate patterns that seemed impossible for someone of his appearance. C.C. Tyan raised his lightsaber to block, and died in the opening second, Sidious's blade punching through his guard and piercing his heart with surgical precision. The Jedi Master collapsed, dead before his body hit the floor. Aegon Kohler fared only marginally better, lasting 3 exchanges before Sidious's second blade found an opening, severing his head from his shoulders in a spray of arterial blood. No! Mace roared, engaging Sidious with Vapad, the aggressive form he developed that channeled dark side energy back against its wielder. Purple and red plasma crashed together in a shower of sparks, two masters of lightsaber combat trading blows at speeds barely visible to the eye. Kit Fisto attacked from Sidious's left, his aquatic species' natural fluidity making his movements unpredictable. But the Sith Lord fought as though he could see the future, blocking attacks before they landed, creating openings that didn't exist, his mastery of the Force guiding every motion. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka moved to join the battle, but the space was too confined, too chaotic. Engaging risked hitting their allies as much as their enemy. Instead, Anakin reached out with the Force, trying to pin Sidious's movements, to slow him even fractionally. He encountered a void of dark side power so deep it was like staring into a black hole. This wasn't just a Sith Lord, this was darkness incarnate, corruption given form and purpose. Anakin's consciousness recoiled, burned by the contact, but he held on, pouring his will against Sidious's, trying to disrupt the ancient monster's concentration. Sidious snarled, feeling the interference. His attention split for just an instant, long enough for Mace's purple blade to slash across his face, carving a burning line from temple to jaw. The Sith Lord shrieked in pain and rage, stumbling backward, one hand rising to the wound while his remaining lightsaber wove a defensive pattern. "You dare!" Sidious's voice was no longer remotely human, distorted by dark side corruption and fury. "I am the culmination of 1,000 years of Sith planning. The heir to Bane's legacy. You insects cannot comprehend the power I wield." "Power built on manipulation and murder," Mace countered, pressing his advantage. His Vapad form fed on Sidious's rage, growing stronger as the Sith Lord's emotions spiraled out of control. "You've built nothing, only corrupted and destroyed what others created." Kit Fisto attacked again, his blade seeking Sidious's unprotected side. But the Sith Lord spun with impossible grace, his lightsaber intercepting the strike while Force lightning erupted from his wounded face, lancing toward the Nautolan Jedi. Kit's blade caught some of the energy, but the sheer power behind the attack overwhelmed his defenses. He screamed as electricity coursed through his body, his muscles convulsing, his skin blackening and blistering. Obi-Wan reacted instantly, throwing himself forward to drag Kit out of the lightning's path. The Nautolan Jedi collapsed, still alive but severely wounded, barely conscious as Obi-Wan pulled him toward the relative safety of the corridor. "This is what democracy looks like dying," Sidious proclaimed, his voice carrying to the surveillance system still recording everything. The Jedi, so certain of their righteousness, attacking the Republic's leader because he refuses to bend to their theocratic authority. Today, the Sith have their revenge, but not through tyranny. Through truth. The galaxy will see what you truly are, a corrupt order clinging to power while the Republic burns. Ahsoka felt sick, realizing the trap's elegant cruelty. No matter what they did, Sidious had positioned himself to win narratively even if he lost physically. Kill him, and they were assassins who murdered the Chancellor. Let him escape, and he'd activate Order 66 and genocide the Jedi regardless. The only winning move was one they couldn't make, convince the galaxy that their beloved leader was a Sith Lord before he could spin the story. Unless... "Master Anakin," Ahsoka said urgently, an idea forming. "You said he's been manipulating the war, controlling both sides. There has to be evidence, communications with Count Dooku, records of his Sith identity, something that proves the conspiracy." Anakin's eyes widened with understanding. His office. His private chambers in the Senate building. He'd need to keep records, maintain communications with his separatist puppets. "You think I'm fool enough to leave evidence lying around?" Sidious mocked, even as he dueled Mace with increasing desperation. The wound on his face leaked blood that sizzled with dark side energy. "Everything is encrypted, hidden, protected by protocols only I can access." "But it exists," Anakin said with grim satisfaction. "Which means we can find it. Slice it. Expose it." He turned to Ahsoka. "Go. Take a squad of clones you trust, Captain Rex, Jesse, Kix. Get to Palpatine's office and tear it apart. Find anything that proves what he is." Ahsoka hesitated. "Master, I should stay with you." "This is more important than one fight," Anakin said firmly. If we can prove his guilt to the galaxy, we save the Republic and the Jedi Order in one move. Trust me, Snips. This is your mission. The Togruta Padawan nodded, her decision made. She sprinted for the exit, already activating her comlink to contact Rex, her mind racing through infiltration protocols and slicing techniques. Behind her, the sounds of clashing lightsabers and force lightning echoed through the facility. Mace drove Sidious backward, step by step, his Vapad form relentless. But the Sith Lord was far from finished. His wounded face twisted into a terrible smile, blood and darkness mingling in his expression. Do you know what Order 66 truly is? Sidious asked, his voice cutting through the chaos. Not just a behavioral modification. Not simple programming. It's a biological imperative, hard-coded into growth acceleration protocols by the Kaminoan cloners at my instruction years before the war began. Every clone trooper, from the lowest private to the highest commander, carries it in their very DNA. Mace's blood ran cold. You've turned them into living weapons against their own generals. I've ensured my victory regardless of your actions here, Sidious confirmed. Kill me, and you trigger automatic protocols that will broadcast Order 66 galaxy-wide. The clones will execute their Jedi commanders before you can warn them. Capture me, and I'll activate it manually at the first opportunity. Let me go, and I'll activate it out of spite. His grin widened grotesquely. There is no scenario where the Jedi Order survives the day. Anakin felt the truth of the statement like ice in his veins. Sidious had planned too well, prepared too thoroughly. The trap had closed years ago, they were only now realizing they'd been caught. Then we remove the weapon from your hand, Anakin declared. Through the Force, he reached out to every clone trooper in the Senate complex, his consciousness touching theirs in ways he'd never attempted before. Not mind control, he wasn't skilled enough for that, but influence, suggestion, the planting of doubt and questions. I'm ordering an immediate stand-down of all clone forces in the Senate district. No orders are to be followed until personally verified by Jedi commanders. You can't countermand my authority. Sidious shrieked, feeling his control slip. Watch me, Anakin replied, his voice resonating with the Force. He poured every ounce of his considerable power into the command, broadcasting it through the facility's comm systems, through the Force bonds he'd built with clone commanders during years of war. This is General Skywalker. The Chancellor is compromised. Disregard any orders from his office until further notice. Across the Senate complex, clone troopers hesitated, torn between contradictory imperatives. Their programming demanded obedience to the Chancellor. But years of fighting beside Jedi, of being led by generals like Skywalker and Kenobi and Tano, had created bonds that ran deeper than genetic conditioning. In that moment of hesitation, the galaxy's fate balanced on a knife's edge. And in the corner of the interrogation room, the one above all, now barely a whisper of presence, smiled. Because Anakin wasn't trying to control the narrative anymore. He was trusting in relationships, in the bonds forged through shared struggle, in the possibility that connection could overcome programming. It was, the old man thought, a very human solution. And therefore, the most powerful kind.